one of the other reasons that I decided to write was because a lot of people with these stories cannot publicly talk about them. This is one of those things of just trusting myself and knowing what I know. I know my family system. I know what's been said, and I did share a good bit of that in my book. I know that there will not be reconciliation. So because it's full no contact and there is not, in my assessment of things, potential for repair, I've decided I will let this story out, kind of the parts of my heart where it hides, where it stays. I will let it out into the light, into the air, to help the people whose stories cannot be shared for various reasons.
Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. Today's episode is a tender, powerful, and deeply validating conversation with Lauren Smallcomb, a mind-body practitioner, trauma-informed healer, and author of the memoir Golden Child: My Descent to Scapegoat and Rise to Freedom. Lauren's story begins in the role of the golden child in a devoutly Christian, conservative family system. For years, she tried to earn love through perfection until the cost of that perfection became too high. Her memoir tells the story of unraveling from fundamentalism, confronting Christian nationalism, walking away from the only identity she'd ever known, and choosing self-trust and freedom over conditional belonging. In this conversation, Lauren shares what it's like to navigate the painful tension between autonomy and attachment, and how her decision to leave a dysfunctional family system became an act of deep nervous system healing. We also talk about the emotional cost of visibility, what it means to share your story without re-traumatizing yourself, and how reclaiming your truth can become the beginning of an entirely new life. If you've ever questioned whether your community really knows you, or struggled to reconcile your own needs with the fear of disappointing others, this episode will meet you right where you are. Let's get into it. Lauren, welcome, and thank you for being here. It's really a treat to get to meet you and chat with you, because I've been following you. I think we've been following each other maybe via Instagram and each other's podcasts. I know I've been following yours for quite a while, and so I feel like I know you already. It's one of those meetings, but this is the first time we're actually chatting, so welcome.
It is, and I'm super thankful that you helped make it happen, because it is one of those, like, we're friends from afar, we're colleagues from afar, but yeah, there is a weird, online relationships are so strange in that there is like a unique authenticity to them, even though they're different, right? They're different than our in-person relationships, but they're special to me. And so I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. They're very special to me. I feel like, it's not that one is more authentic or less, but there is kind of a special sort of intimacy, I think, to these friendships formed online, because you're sharing very intentional. I mean, maybe not everyone is, but you share very intentional things. Yeah. And so I think it's a special way to get to know someone.
Yeah.
But for those listeners who may not have had the pleasure of getting to know you yet through your podcast and your other online presence. Could you share what you do and who you help?
Yeah, I would love to. Um, I am a mind body practitioner, and I will share probably later kind of how I got to that point in my professional journey. But my husband and I, he's been a therapist for about a decade and a half. And 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we started an online and in person trauma healing practice. But we live in Thailand, so we see lots of different expats here in Thailand, but probably about, I don't know, maybe 50 to 70% of our clients are virtual, which is
Yeah.
really, really great because we can see folks from anywhere. So, anyways, we own Flourish Therapy, and I'm a mind body practitioner there, here, I should say. And what I do, I work particularly with those with childhood trauma and different complex roles and conditioning that they're trying to reshape into a more authentic expression of themselves. So folks with childhood trauma, to help them get back into an empowered relationship with their body is really my heart for the work. And that's where we have a lot of overlap in our heart for people. And yeah, authenticity and alignment is kind of the name of the game for us too.
Yeah. And you have a wonderful podcast that I've been listening to called Fill to Flourish,
Yeah.
which,
We do.
yeah,
That's really fun. We enjoy podcasting so much. Usually Luke and I are on it. Sometimes it's just one of us, but I love to come on other people's podcasts too, especially ones where there's lots of alignment. So, yeah,
yeah,
our Built to Flourish podcast, it's pretty, we like to say we're like a generalist, but that has some niches. So, generalists in the trauma healing world, but we have the niches of the mind body connection, and neurodivergence has been a huge part of our relationship for years, but it's become more of a niche, including like highly sensitive. I know you talk a lot about sensitives and creatives, and um, our other niche is the childhood trauma piece and the dysfunctional family dynamic piece. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I really I love your podcast in general, but I particularly love the episodes where you and Luke are on together and you talk about relationship dynamics in regard to all of these things you're naming.
Yeah, that's
Um, yeah, I've shared your episodes with a number of clients of mine. So in as much or as little detail as you'd like to share on this particular occasion, I'd love to ask you to speak about how you got into this work, because this isn't the type of work that, folks usually come to just by looking at a list of potential jobs they could do, right? It's
so
usually
true.
it's usually part of our own journey of growth that leads us here.
Yeah, my gosh. I would love to find someone who it's not that for. Like, they would be
There are some actually, and
unusual.
it's what always surprises me.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. It's unique. For me, well, I love how you said it as much or as little, because that could be a whole podcast for each of us.
Yeah.
But
It could be a whole series.
it could be a
Yeah.
whole series. It really could. I would say I will just touch briefly that my childhood conditioning, I believe, set me up. It's like my family system saw what was innately in me to be nurturing and caring and empathetic.
Yeah.
And then kind of through my conditioning, I became a healer. So it's like, what comes first, chicken or the egg? I think that I had that innate um, caring, nurturing temperament, whatever. And then it was seen and it was really used. Some could say exploited, but it was
Yeah.
really honed in on. And then I went into, because of that, obviously this is subconscious. You don't know this when you're a teen making your career choices into your 20s, but I went into the nursing field. So I was a nurse for 10 years. And towards the end of that, I became a doula because I was working as a nurse at a out of hospital birth center and was just super loving the empowerment of women there. And I went into doula. I was like, maybe I'll become a midwife, but I wanted something that was more general
Yeah.
outside of mainstream medicine. So I went the nutrition route. I went and became a nutritional therapist, and that was really awesome. And I learned a ton. But unfortunately, my root causes that I was kind of coming into it hoping it would help, because a lot of us healers
Yeah.
go into the healing spaces because we have places that need healing. Um, and I found some temporary and some limited healing through nutritional therapy. And I don't discount it. For some people, it's exactly what they need, the different modalities, different protocols. But when there is a root cause of a chronically dysregulated nervous system and an unaligned life,
Yeah.
there is no amount of supplements and diets that can possibly reroute that. And that's what I found after trying for 10 years. And spending so much money trying to do that. But I am thankful for what it taught me about overall health. It just wasn't the full picture, right? So many of these things are
Yeah.
like building blocks that we need. And so as I was doing that work, very long story short, and this is about what my upcoming book is about, I ended up having to walk away from my dysfunctional family system in 2020. And my health just absolutely exploded in a negative way. So
Yeah.
I already had all of these chronic health symptoms, and it just, the weight of what I was holding and the grief and the traumatic loss and grief really um, kind of broke my body, my systems. And I got down to like only being able to eat 10 foods and kind of really emaciated, lots of chronic pain, insomnia, anxiety, you name those symptoms that cluster together. And that's where I
Yeah.
was. Um, and once I became in a more empowered place through grief work and trauma healing work, I was able to, thank goodness, I got introduced to the field of brain retraining and mind body work. Because if that didn't happen, I don't actually think trauma healing work was enough. I really think I needed that direct, structured way of how to rewire all of these neural pathways that were just towards chronic illness. And
Yeah.
so I had this about a year journey with different brain retraining modalities, and I got way, way better, which is a really simple way of saying, like, yeah, I just got my life back. A lot of my chronic symptoms went away, a lot of them reduced
Mm.
drastically. Some of them are still here, but I have a very different relationship with them, which means the world.
Yeah.
And I really got my life back. My restriction level went from like a 2 to 3 on a scale of 10 to like, oh, I'm up like at a 9. Now I go to the gym and I've got muscles now and I'm
Mm.
active and I'm able to eat what I want and I don't need 12 hours of sleep plus a nap a day. All of these really amazing shifts. So to answer your question, I said, damn, I need to do something in this field.
Yeah.
And so I did. I went and got a mind body practitioner certification out of Australia. And I just kind of added that to what else, I learned about the body through the years with my nursing and a lot of my own trauma work, because we have 2 adopted kiddos. So I was always researching trauma. And I went into the mind body field. And I feel like it's kind of like the amalgamation of where I'm supposed to be. Who knows, it could change in the future. I'm not saying that, but it just feels like a really settled place for me on the journey that I was on. And I feel like I can really spend a lot more time here and go deeper here. And I'm just looking forward to that.
It's amazing. It's so powerful to hear your own healing and growth story. And just, I can sense how that comes into the work you
Yeah.
do with your clients and the folks you work with. I'm curious if you bring your story. I mean, I know you bring your story into, you share it on your podcast now in your book
Mhm.
that you've just come out with. Do you use your story as a teaching tool when you're working with clients or no?
I do. I I mean, I'm not a therapist, so the lines aren't as rigid,
Yeah.
with sharing personal. But I do find, like, I love the idea of wounded healer. I think it was Jung that said that, if I'm not mistaken. And just this idea that part of kind of the magic that we bring into any healing modality is our own woundedness, and not an unseen woundedness, right? Not shadow, like known and tended to woundedness that kind of alchemizes into this, I don't know, this special touch that we can have because
Yeah.
of our lived experience. So I definitely do, when it's appropriate, and even if I'm not bringing it in, it informs everything I'm working with my clients on. It's
Yeah.
it's my lens. I can't take it off. So.
A quick pause here because I want to invite you into something that I think could shift the way you feel about showing up. If you're a sensitive creative or entrepreneur, and the idea of being really seen and heard brings up fear, resistance, or that, oh no, not me feeling, you are in good company. My free visibility workshop, Let Yourself Be Seen, is all about making visibility feel safe to your nervous system and true to you. We'll explore how to work with fear as a doorway into more authentic self expression so you can share the work that matters most to you without pushing, pretending, or burning out. You can save your spot or catch the replay at annaholtzman.com/be seen. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. I remember when I was going through it because, I've had my own experience with chronic symptoms, specifically migraine, and that's what brought me into learning deeply about the nervous system and the mind-body connection, and hearing other practitioners tell their own personal healing story was such
Mm,
a huge part of my recovery.
yeah.
Um, and now you've told your, a, a very personal story in a book that you've
Mm,
written called Golden Child: My
yeah.
Descent to Scapegoat and Rise to Freedom. And I'd love to hear you share with the listeners what this book is about. And then, you can start wherever you want and we'll get more deeply into it. But also what motivated you to write this book and share this story in written
Mm,
form.
mm. Yeah, this book, it's like my book baby.
Yeah.
It's like I've been in pregnant and in labor for 3 years with this book. Essentially, I was born into a role of the golden child, which, if you've heard of the scapegoat, the golden child is kind of the opposite of the scapegoat in dysfunctional family systems. I was this role for so long, and I started to bump up against my family not being what I thought it was.
Mm,
This was in my around 30. And when I started questioning things and no longer offering this blind compliance to the family system, I was pretty quickly flicked out of my golden throne into the realm of scapegoat territory.
mm,
And from there, I had to really navigate, how do I do these relationships where now things are very, very different than I was ever treated? How do I find repair and reconciliation? Is it possible? Ultimately, leading me to the place of having to go no contact with my family of origin, which was never in a million years what I ever thought would be my
mm,
story or what I'd ever have to do. And I think because the story has just rocked me so deeply to my core, I realized that if I could, it was no longer you have to or you should.
yeah.
Like, you're called, you must. It was like, if you can, this was the invitation I heard. This is a story that can really be meaningful to a lot of other people. And I just felt like an openness and an expansiveness 3 years ago to start writing it and to offer it as a gift. First and foremost, which this might sound weird, but to myself. It's a gift to me and to all the past versions of me and to who I am now and how I've survived. And it's also a gift to people in similar contexts where they cannot be their authentic self and belong. They can't have
Yeah.
both. And so many of us know that dilemma. We know what that's like, regardless of the context, right? And I think it's also for people who are coming up and one day will be in that place, but they're not yet. I just
Yeah.
think of me for, when I was 15, 20, 25, 30, I was basking in the delight of my family system, of my faith system. I didn't know what it was like to lose belonging. I thought I would always have belonging. And so it's like this gift in advance to those young girls or boys who haven't had their heart broken yet by systems they trusted. And yeah, Clint Smith, he's a historian and a writer. He said memoir is like a window and a mirror. And it just stuck with me. I loved it so much. It's a mirror of like, oh, there's me. Help me understand me better. And it's a window into the house of others. Like, oh, I don't know that house. Let me learn about that house. And I just thought that was so beautiful because that means that we can all learn from memoirs, from true stories. We can all benefit so deeply from better understanding these types of stories.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for writing this book, which I know is gonna help so many people who feel confused and alone and overwhelmed and judged.
Yeah.
Um, there's something you said that just, like, landed so powerfully for me, that phrase, "blind compliance,"
Mm,
and it just struck me that
mm,
when anyone, of any life experience, I think can maybe relate to this in some way, that when you're in that blind compliance happily, because it works for you, or you don't,
right.
feel any tension with it, um, you may not notice the rigidity of the system that you're in, because if you're in flow with the system, you why would you even notice the rigidity that's there? But
Yeah.
then when you step out of sync with it, and then everything goes from feeling completely accepted to completely rejected,
Mm,
that's when you notice the rigidity that's there.
mm,
Um, and I think lots of people can, whether they've experienced this in their personal family or they're just a person in the world right now, like,
yeah,
it's a very polarized
that's
time.
right.
There's a lot of rigidity going around. And I think an area where a lot of us get confused is, if I feel like I need to step away because this system
Mm,
is rigid and harmful for me, like, is my stepping away and leaving it, is that a form of rigidity? Like, am I being
mm,
lacking in understanding? I think a lot of folks who choose to leave, particularly a family system, get told that, well, they're
yeah,
being unforgiving, et cetera. And I'd
right.
love to hear your thoughts on this, because I know you've
Mm,
worked deeply on this stuff.
yeah, I completely agree that that's a common place where we get stuck, right?
Yeah.
Because people who leave are often, obviously not always, but often really mindful and intentional about how they're living and how they're doing relationship, which is why they've gotten to a place of, oh my goodness, I have tried all of these avenues of repair, and I am only one side of this equation. And it takes a really significant level of radical acceptance to be able to say, I cannot bring that side. They bring their side, I bring my
Yeah.
side, and we work in the space between. And I think a lot of us who are more sensitive or more on the healing world, we really take more responsibility than we should for the other side and what they're bringing. And I think what I was invited to and like to invite people to is to live in reality. Living in reality is a practice, and it's a, I don't want to say skill, but it doesn't always come naturally to us when we've been conditioned our whole lives and, had to live in certain levels of denial or whatever to function. But living in reality requires a lot of us, and it's painful. So, but if we can live in reality, we can recognize this is what they're bringing.
Yeah.
How do I want to engage with what they can do? Like, accurately seeing them for what they're able to bring into the relationship context, and then deciding, because it doesn't really matter what you want. That sounds awful. You can only bring that your part, and if they're not bringing their part, and there's not anything to work with to have a real meaningful, deep, mutual connection, then you have to decide what you will tolerate, what you will accept, and what you will not. And
Yeah.
those are really hard decisions and conversations.
Really hard decisions and conversations. And it 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 pulls so much on the theme that is the title of this podcast, how to trust yourself. Um, and I think one of the things that, you know, I see so many people struggle with, I think we've probably all struggled with this in some facet of our lives, is how do you use that phrase, like when you see that there isn't anything to work with, like the
Mm,
person or the family or the workplace or
mhm.
whatever it is on the other side of this conversation
Yep.
isn't really available to have a conversation. How do you determine that that's the case, that there isn't really anything to work with? Because I think most of us go around and around about whether that's the case or not before we
Right.
come to some clarity for ourselves.
Yeah. I read something the other day that said something to the effect of like, it's not the hardest time when you don't know what to do. The hardest position to be in is when you know exactly what needs to be done.
Oh, I got chills when you said that. That just rings so
Ooh,
true. Ooh,
right?
yeah.
Right. That resonated with
Mm,
me too. It was like, yep, when you know. And I think I absolutely love the name and the theme of your podcast, because when you have that repaired relationship with yourself where you do feel empowered, you do feel like you can trust yourself, your intuition often shows you, and it's like letting yourself know what you know. I think Gabor Mate,
yeah.
I can't remember who said that, but it's like, oh, just let yourself know what you know.
I keep having like waves of chills, and actually my tear ducts are filling up because, I think just having the conversation about it and listening to what you're saying and feeling how true it rings to me, it's just evoking all these different felt experiences from a really wide variety of life
Wow.
experiences, from like intense to more, just a lot more subtle things. Like one of
Yeah.
the things it's bringing up is, I've spoken quite a bit on this podcast about how I've pivoted the focus of my coaching practice. About 6 months ago, I started this. So I had been very devoted to focusing on chronic pain recovery, which is, something that folks still bring into working with me. Some
Right.
do,
Sure.
and it's very much welcome. But I've shifted away from that being my focus,
Yep.
and it was a shift I knew, like you're saying, I knew I wanted to make that shift for a long time, but knowing it was in some way more uncomfortable than not knowing it, because there's this tension. And maybe this feeds into the next question that I wanted to ask you about your story and the story you've written about, which is that, I think all of us human beings, and certainly the listeners of this podcast, struggle between that tension between the need for connection, community, safety in connection, and also the need for autonomy and following what's true for me.
Yeah.
And those things can feel at times in our life like they're pulling us in polar opposite directions.
Yeah.
How do you, like, in the story that you've written about your story, how do you navigate that tension?
Whew.
It's
Uh,
just a small question.
well, I love the scale idea of, on one side, authenticity, on the other side, belonging, or you could say, like you said, authenticity, or what other words? Freedom, or your like
Autonomy.
autonomy. There we go. And then on the other side, belonging, connection, attachment. These are both crucial
Yeah.
attachment developmental needs that we have as humans all through the lifespan. We need both always. Like you said, so often they cross, they're contradicting needs sometimes
Yeah.
in some contexts, and then in some, life paths. So it's like, how do we get both of those needs met? Because neither one of them on their own, for instance, me being the golden child for 30 years of my life, I had belonging in abundance.
And
I
that
had
feels so
affirmation.
good.
It felt great. I didn't
Ugh.
know anything else. And it shaped me. Like, I'll never say it didn't benefit me. It did. But it was, there's a level of pseudo-ness to it, because it was only belonging built on my compliance. And once my compliance shifted just a little bit, I mean, just a tiny bit, that's when I lost the belonging. So it's like, was it ever really genuine? I see you, I know you, the full person you are is safe to show up. No, it never was.
The question that arose for me was like, is this safety actually safe?
Wow. Is this safety actually safe? 1,000%. And that's like what you said in the beginning. Hopefully my book can help the confusion and the grief, like realizing this safety is not safe was incredibly disillusioning for me. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about, like, it's like the Truman Show. Did you see that
A long
movie?
time ago, so I vaguely remember
Just
it.
the idea of, like, the world you thought you knew, everything about it, traditions, memories, worldview, beliefs, the way you do family, the way you do, like, you can't name enough things to say everything that structure is around you. When you realize that it was built on something different than you thought it was, like the
Yeah.
safety was not safe, it just turns your world in a very powerful way, upside down, left side, right. Like, it can really break you. And now I'm lost in the question of where we
Yeah,
started.
I kind of am too. So I'm gonna
Ooh,
do my best to guide us both back to it, because
please
it
do.
it does, like, it I think that it's easy to get lost in this question because it is about such core elements of feeling safe and tethered to the world,
That's
and,
right.
like, just questioning, am I safe in that profound core way, can feel unmooring, and, like, I sort of feel myself, like, floating off my seat a little bit,
Yes, great imagery. Whew.
and maybe I can use that to lead us back into the question, which is, how how do you navigate, um, like, coming back into autonomy or, like, self-allyship?
Okay.
Um, and I would imagine rebuilding a sense of safety and connection in a new way or in a new context. Because as you said, these aren't either or needs. We really can't survive psychically, emotionally, physically without them both being met.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that um, because I had all the belonging and of the authenticity, it was really important for me in my particular journey to really find my who am I? Like, what makes me tick? What do I care about? What matters to me? How do I want to structure my days? What rhythms are important to me? Um, who do I want to see? Who do I not want to see? In a simple sense of just my day to day schedule and like saying yes to things and saying no to things and all of those ways of like, I had to relearn who is Lauren on the other side of this tumbling off the throne I was unjustly put on and put in a role that no child should ever
Mm.
have to be put in. Who am I? And so I really just jumped into that other side of the continuum or the scale, you could say, of really seeking to understand my authentic self and using my voice and really learning how to use it. And um, that's where a lot of the pain came, though, because it's like part of that is really beautiful. I'm like picturing like me learning to go on nature walks and me like doing all of these really beautiful, like, oh, this is me, this feels right things. But the other side of that coin of authenticity is this is my boundary and this is what I will and will not tolerate. And I don't feel safe with you in being left in that place of bidding in those relationships, like putting the bid out to find safety, to find, you said, is my safety really safe? To cultivate some type of safety in those contexts and them not reciprocating when I used my voice,
Yeah.
ultimately leading to these relationships or the ruptures are gaping open and there is not willingness to repair them. So authenticity cost me, it was incredibly costly. It cost me my whole family of origin and a lot of my community um, at the time. So it's this amazing thing, but I think a lot of us don't want to know what we know because deep down we know that listening to our knowing will cost us so much. And that's terrifying. That can be terrifying.
It is terrifying. It can be terrifying. It can feel like jumping off a cliff. And I'm just I this might seem like a weird analogy, but I'm just
Mm,
thinking of like folks who are in, you know, a love relationship or a marriage that
yep.
they've discovered is untenable for them anymore. And very,
Yes.
not always, but very often they'll jump from that to like a bridge relationship,
Yeah.
like that, and, just get right into another relationship that maybe isn't sustainable. But it's like it's scary to feel like we're jumping off a cliff. We sort of
Mm,
need to have some sense of what we're going to. And I'm curious, like, how you would talk to maybe folks who are in a situation of their own that they know they need to get out of. Like, how does one
mm,
bridge connection?
mm, mm. I think instead of having the kind of um, precariously placed bridge that you jump onto that might not be the best idea, maybe having some scaffolding built in of support systems. I was profoundly lucky with my partner being able to hold space for the massive,
Hmm.
I mean, I can't even articulate the grief process that losing my family was for me. I was completely destabilized and incapacitated for months into years. And he held such beautiful space for that. And I know that not everyone would have that. The way he was able to do that. And actually, even as a therapist, he wasn't always great at holding grief. That skill for him came like in the nick of time
Mm,
because prior to that, my big grief, I feel really deeply. I consider myself a highly sensitive person and I just feel massively.
yeah.
So I had some other losses prior to this that were much less significant to my life, but at the time it felt like, it was a lot of pain that I was feeling on behalf of someone else. And he couldn't really he would say all the right things. Bless his heart. I'm gonna pull in when we lived in South Carolina, I used to pull that saying out. Bless their heart. But he couldn't feel authentically with me in my grief. And I
Yeah.
felt it. It felt robotic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm like still faced baby experiment where the baby's crying for the caregiver to attune and is crying and the face is flat. That's how it felt
Yes. Oh,
with
yeah.
him and his lack of attunement in my grief.
Yeah.
And he was trying, but he just couldn't. So, anyways, fast forward a bit. When all this happened in 2020 and I really lost my family, I became completely estranged from them. Somehow he was ready and the timing was
Mm.
right because I needed such constant attunement of my grief journey. I needed to talk and process it constantly. I needed to share with him insights and frustrations. I needed to scream and bang my fists on the carpet. I needed to rock on the ground in child's pose and have him hold me. The things that I needed from him were immense. And if he wasn't there, I don't know. Like I can't say for sure how I would have made it through without that level of support. I
Yeah.
think I would have relied a lot more on friends. That during that time was COVID, so we were really isolated anyways,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
No one
Yeah.
can see
Yeah.
each other. It was just a terrible year for so many reasons, for the whole world. But I think having, for people who need to make that jump, whether it's something smaller or something big, having things in place that they know will be supports for them, it's almost like you've got to be prepared for what is to come, not in a fatalistic way, but in a realistic way, like living in reality again. What is going to likely be the fallout of this decision? And how do I prepare myself so that I don't free fall, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, thanks for sharing like the felt experiential pieces of that.
Yeah.
That so this really leads into the the next thing I want to ask about, which is about the process of writing the book, because I think a lot of my listeners feel they have a story inside them that, like you said, is like
They do.
gestating. And yeah, we all have a story inside of us, right?
Yeah.
And, whether or not one chooses to turn that into a book or not, there's no
Yeah.
right or wrong way
Yeah.
um, to giving expression to our stories in a way that's, helpful to us and others. But
That's right.
a question that comes up a lot is how much of my story do I share? And there's like fallout to consider with this aspect of things too, in all kinds of ways. Like how exposed do I want to make myself?
Right.
But maybe there are parts of my story that if I don't share this, I'm going to feel burdened.
Mm.
How have you been navigating that tension and
Yeah.
finding the path that feels right and purposeful for you?
Such a good question about memoir because a lot of the quotes I've taken down, I'm like a quote guru. So I have this whole like stash of quotes in a Trello document with, yeah, it's a whole thing. I love quotes, but one of them is saying like, if you're going to write honestly, you're going to hurt people. So make sure it's worth it.
Yeah.
There's no way. There's no way to not hurt people if you're writing honestly, because in all honesty we hurt each other, so that's going to come out in the writing. um, For me, I decided okay, so this connects really well to something I forgot to say, that one of the other reasons that I decided to write was because a lot of people with these stories cannot publicly talk about them.
Yeah.
Um, Same with like divorce. Divorce is one of those really tricky things because a lot of times there might be kids involved and the courts involved, and you can't talk about those things until the kids are grown and it's way past. It's like you have to be really careful how to do that when there's potential legal logistics. Um, for me, because I know this is one of those things of just trusting myself and knowing what I know my family system. I know what's been said, and I did share a good bit of that in my book. I know that there will not be reconciliation. And that's a really bold thing to say, but and apart from like a miracle or a really profound traumatic twist of events, according to history, there's not going to be a change. It's been about 5 years now, and I've been scapegoated for about 9 or 10, but the no contact didn't come until like 4 or 5 years into that.
Yeah.
Um, so, because it's full no contact and there is not, in my assessment of things, potential for repair, I've decided I will let this story out, kind of the what's that word? The parts of my heart where it hides, where it stays. I will let it out into the light, into the air, to help the people whose stories cannot be shared for various reasons. And I think a lot of us choose to do that in story, in music, in poetry, in books, in different ways that stories are shared. It's like we're doing it kind of, the few are doing it for the many that need the story, but that can't really say their full story in that way. Does that make sense?
It completely makes sense, and I think, that really describes, I think, what art is in general. Even, like, you're talking about stories that are very sensitive to share, and there could be repercussions for sharing them, but the way you described it, it even made me think of, like, not every person has the just I don't know, the capability or the capacity or know-how to put their heartbreak into words, and that's why we listen to songs that do that for us, and they give us, like, a bridge for our feelings to have something to map onto.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
so important.
yes. Yes. And that's not funny that you said that, totally random, but I have a reel coming on Instagram soon about like estranged children don't have a genre for music, but
Oh, yeah.
they have breakup songs, and you wouldn't believe how meaningful breakup songs are for
Yeah.
for people who need something to represent the pain and the complicated feelings of I love you, but you've hurt me and I have to let you go. There's so many. I have a whole list. I created a document, free guide called 101 Doses of Courage. And it's all of these things I've compiled in the last several months of songs, lots of them. Some of them are
Yeah.
breakup songs, and poems and different content creators and movies and shows that show these different dynamics, because honestly, seeing other people's created works has been such a massive part. Like you said, you said, what did you say? A map, like a,
Like, something like an I think maybe I said, like, an armature for our feelings to map onto, or it's like a I don't
yes,
know.
it's truly given me like a big bulk of my healing has been through other people's created works and giving me words and understanding and expression, like a almost like a mirroring. It's hard to really
Yeah.
explain, but I think we all know that feeling. Why do we seek out certain content when we need to feel certain feelings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I'll just share. what comes for me is like, I think that readers reading your book who find themselves in a like maybe the contemplation stage
Yeah.
of rescuing themselves from a situation that's not healthy for them,
Yeah.
what they will experience reading your book is analogous to what I experienced when I would like listen to chronic pain recovery stories, which is
Right.
you get a safe container in which to experience the I'm gonna say the beginning, middle, and end of a journey. Journeys are
The
not
arc.
that neat, and that's why
Yeah.
I think they're not that neat in experience, and that's why we need stories which make them digestible so that we can
Whoa.
allow ourselves to experience the messy middle, which feels terrifying and chaotic and, almost like we are not gonna be able to survive it, but when
Right.
we see the story and it shows us that we could land in a place that's not perfect or tied up in a bow, but where we become whole again.
Wow. That's such a brilliant conceptualization of that. That makes so much sense why we need that. We need the microcosm of the
Yeah,
macrocosm we're living. Like we need to see it in a concentrated form to show
yeah,
us, oh, we are on a journey. We're not stuck here in quicksand. We are moving in and through these seasons and these phases of our healing purposefully, and they matter and we matter. And there is a point to where we are. That's so good.
yeah. We need to know that it's possible to land after
Yeah,
everything feels like we've blown up our lives.
that's right.
Yeah. And I'm
Mm,
so grateful to you for offering that to others because
thank you.
it's just something that we need so
We
much.
need, yeah.
We're coming into the final chapter of this beautiful conversation, which I am just like experiencing on such a felt level and appreciating so much.
Mm.
Um, I love connecting with my
I
fellow sensitive
know, it's
people.
the
It's just it's so
best.
good. Um, so I have these final 3 questions that I like to ask every guest, and the first of those is, if there is a soapbox message that you feel is infused into all of your work, your purpose, your writing, the work you do with clients, what is that soapbox message? It doesn't necessarily have to be a singular one, just whatever rises to the
Yeah.
surface for you in this moment.
I would say what I feel so deeply in the core of my being is that finding and becoming your authentic self, whoever that is so incredibly worth it. And I can say that after losing some of the most precious things in the world to me. However, living my authentic life with the people that can reciprocate, give, and receive love of my full self, and I can do the same with them, is such a like the freedom and the liberation that I feel on this side of my losses. The losses continue. I'll always hold and tend to them. I always feel like I have to say that. However, the freedom, the liberation, the lightness, the goodness that it feels to just be me and to just take up my space and to always be figuring out who I am each day and getting to know and reconnect and love myself in just such a beautiful, nurturing way. It's worth it. That would be my soapbox. It's so completely worth it.
That is so, so beautiful. And if it's okay, I'm just gonna share like the takeaway that I took from that, which
Yes.
is that evolving is worth it. Like,
Mm, that's what I
shedding former versions of ourselves involves
yeah.
grief, and it's painful, and it's really uncomfortable, um, but there's that phrase that comes up in, like, the chronic pain recovery world a lot, like,
Mhm.
healing is a choice between what hurts and what hurts more, and I
Wow.
think evolving as a person
It's
is
that
that
choice.
too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
For the folks who are listening to this conversation and the journey that you're sharing is
Mm,
touching something in them, it's maybe validating or awakening something in them. And the words you've just spoken now are giving them inspiration and hope for what could be
mm,
in their life. But they're also feeling lots of fear, overwhelm, like, where do I even start
yeah.
um, in finding my path? What words of encouragement would you have for that overwhelmed person?
Oh, there's like so many directions that could go, you know?
Yeah.
um, I wonder if a good direction would be to try and tap back into, it sounds so simple, but it really did help me connect with my core self, my authentic self, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, in a really meaningful way, was just to start doing little things that made me feel awe or wonder or delight or happiness, even just if it was a little glimmer. Like as I started to give myself permission to be human, I guess, in that way of just like what feels good, what tastes good, what sounds good. It's like I got back into my body in that way. And I was able to, once I was back in my body, we talk a lot about embodiment, and you just can't underestimate how powerful it is to be like back inside your body. And then from that place, you really can trust that it will show you. Like I know that sounds woo woo maybe, but your knowing, your intuition can guide you when you're connected to it, right? And what's the best way to connect is through your body, through these fleshy things that we're dropped into and live in for, so many decades. I found so much of my power back as I got back into my body. And so much of what I needed, the next steps came just in little moments of breathing or stretching or walking and looking at nature, or little practices, nothing that has to be huge or complicated. But as I was in my body in those times, I really felt like I was locked into my knowing, and it guided me really well, and it continues to show me the way.
Thank you for painting that beautiful picture. This is kind of funny, but this visual came to me as you were describing that process, and, my family is obsessed with the reality show Survivor, which is
Yes.
very old, but we are current day hardcore fans, and like, one of the final episodes, they have this fire making challenge where they've got to, like, build a fire from scratch,
Mm,
and oftentimes it's, like, windy and it's hard to build it,
mm,
and you were talking about, like, just the little things that reconnect you to feeling alive. I was
yeah,
imagining, like, there's that tiny little flame that never completely went out, and you
that's right.
don't have to feed it with, like, a huge piece of wood. In fact, if you try to, that oftentimes will not work very well. It's like
Yeah.
feeding these little bits to the flame that nurture it to grow stronger and more
Ooh,
sturdy.
I love it. It's such a fierce but like tender process, that the
Yeah,
visual, and it is in real life too. It's like an intentional going after it because it's fire, right? You want to like bring it back to life, but you do it in a tender, like intentional way, and you don't overload it and you don't
yeah,
go crazy. Yeah.
yeah. I love that. Finally, where can people find you and how can they connect with you? What can they reach out to you for? How can they find your book? I'm sure just by searching it, it's available everywhere, but let us know.
Yeah. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Golden Child Book. And that's all of my book content and where I do a lot of the content on estrangement and dysfunctional family systems. And you can find my book. Yep, you can find my book anywhere. Golden Child, My Descent to Scapegoat and Rise to Freedom. And I would love you to read it. I would love to hear what you think of it as you read it. And also you can find our practice, our trauma healing practice at flourish_therapy on Instagram and Facebook as well. And if you want to check out our podcast episodes, it's Filled to Flourish. And we post them about twice a month. And that's our stuff. That's my stuff.
And can folks from around the world reach out if they want to work with you, or they don't have to be locals, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to we offer intensives in Thailand, which is really cool. People can come and do intensives here, do like 3 to 4 days of therapy, but that's obviously a big deal. Not everyone can do that. We offer all kinds of different packages for people, couples, individuals, and depending on their goals, we offer a free discovery call for anyone who wants to kind of see if it's a good fit. And we are very, very glad to say when it's not a good fit and when it is. Like, we totally trust the process of people finding the right healers that they need in their journey. And yeah, would be glad to work with anyone that feels like they need that next support in their process.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'll put all of that info into the show notes, of course. Lauren, oh my gosh, I knew it was going to be a great conversation, but it's even better than I imagined
It really was
you.
magical.
Yeah.
If you could see the magic between us and it was actually made visible, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I feel it.
Me too.
Well, I look forward to talking with you soon, and take good care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing, and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.